As I said, my hope is to also to learn more about what we're doing here because about the subject. Because although I worked with finance and operations in the past, finance more than supply chain management, and I also have the certification for S365 Finance, supply chain management, and therefore supply chain capabilities for manufacturing distributions within the D365 platform, like supply chain management, demand planning, is always something that I kept as a from a solution architect point of view, not from a functional consultant, not from a trainer from point of view. So I worked on projects where I was responsible for designing the architecture, but the functional, the configuration elements or the functional elements, and of course development extensions or application interface, it's always something I left to the expert in this field. Well, I know quite a lot about the subject because I worked in supply chain management for many years before learning Dynamics, but I know it inside out. So I know everything about the subject from Business Central point of view, which I use pretty much every day in my work, right? So today we should really, my goal is also, to learn more from you. So there we go. It's 1 minute on the clock. We are live on Teams. What one, we got 3 people says here on live here on this meeting, and also on LinkedIn. And so, Jason, hello once again. How are you today?
Hello, I'm doing well, thank you.
Excellent, very well. So, episode 2 of our short series about learning Dynamics 365. Today is about inventory and supply chain capabilities for manufacturing and distribution. Where should we start from, Jason? How do you approach these capabilities? Because you and I have been talking about this subject, right? From as a trainer point of view, training consultants, training teams, like configuration options. The subject is it's vast, and people often are lost, right? So, as a trainer, as an expert, why don't we start with this, how do you approach something so complex? What's your approach? How do you teach it? How can people learn it?
Yeah, so I think the first thing that we need to talk about is why somebody would select something of this nature, right? And so, a lot of people think that their company has to be a certain size before they can run certain software. And really, it's not related to company size at all. It's really related to complexity.
Yes.
And people need to understand that if they have a complex manufacturing environment, subcontracting, or what have you, that's really what drives you to a package like Dynamics, is that you need to get away from the spreadsheets and from the disconnected systems where you're maintaining 2 sources of the truth, and get everything into one comprehensive package. So things like multi-site, process manufacturing with formulas instead of bill of materials. Do you have like intercompany planning? Are you a regulated industry? So are you heavily regulated? So things like that that's some of the reasons why people would select this package, and would be to help them navigate that complexity in their business and make it as easy as possible to run their business day to day in light of that complexity. So that's kind of the first, that's some of the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say is that I kind of touched on already, is that it's a shared data model. And so, where a lot of people that I work with, they may have a finance system and they may have a warehousing system, or they may have a finance system only, and their warehouses are operating on something, a 3PL or something else. So by bringing them into Dynamics, you're unifying that, that data from finance and procurement and inventory and warehouse and manufacturing and logistics. It all is living in one system, which is a game changer for a lot of people, because a lot of people that I work with, when we go in and do these implementations or do these trainings, they're working in a disconnected world where they have these 2 or 3 disparate systems they have to pull data from, and the visibility is not, they don't have the visibility they would like to have into their business, right? That's something that suffers when you have those disconnected systems is you don't have good visibility. So the way I normally would approach it would be to take that complexity and start breaking that complexity down into bite-sized chunks. So if we just take manufacturing as an example, we've got to start understanding that manufacturing and how it works. Because as you said, you need to have the business knowledge that you're going to then translate into the technical knowledge. If you don't understand the business, how can you configure a software package to work with the business, right? So the software, we said this in the last episode, the software is a bit agnostic. It doesn't care until you configure it. It doesn't really have a preference, right? So I would say that you would take your manufacturing, or you would take your warehouse management or your procurement, and you would start breaking that down into individual processes that you could then start to configure and start to display how the system handles those for the users. So
absolutely, yeah.
That's
I want to make a comment here, just because I think you started on the right path. Exactly what needs to be done. You started with the concept of the business processes and the fact that training follows the operating model and the data layer. So, as counterintuitive as that might sound, your point, your claim as an expert, as a trainer, is that to learn and to teach how a specific application like Dynamics 365 can be finance, supply chain management, Business Central, how that application handles supply chain capabilities, inventory, manufacturing, finite schedule, MPS, MRP. Features and capabilities are almost the last thing you look at. You start from an operating model and the processes.
Absolutely.
Then you come and you look up the configuration and then understand the data layer, because without a sound and defined process that can be translated into configuration, and without that understanding that the data model is shared, so it's no longer my numbers on inventory and finance numbers related to inventory. All of a sudden, the head of supply chain management, the shop floor manager, owning the balance sheet and the P&L of their departments, will have to share the data with the finance team. So it's no longer my P&L or your P&L, it's the company P&L, right? And so it's those who want to learn software and applications often jumps into, I need to learn the pages, I need to learn the tables, I need to read the features. Hold on, do you understand what it means? Manufacturing variance and material variance in the shop floor and the impact it has got on your team and finance. We need to start from that, right?
And that's also how we train as well. You want to train based on those processes, you don't want to train based on the system, right? You want to, people that work, if they can relate it to their daily job, they are much more likely to retain what they learn because it's applicable to them. So I want to train them on their new process of manufacturing or their new process of procurement. And the software is somewhat of a second fiddle, right? It's somewhat of a secondary focus, because we're going to look at, we talked about last episode as well, garbage in, garbage out. We also are going to try to redesign processes to make them be modern and make them be maybe make some corrections that of some pain points that we've been experiencing for years. Now's the time to correct those. So that's why we wanted to start with the process.
Exactly. And so now that we settled the right approach, right processes, configuration, understand the organizations, right? The organization policies, their procedures, their quality assurance, compliance, right? And then we understand data model, and then we can translate it into features. What are, in your opinion, the overlooked features, right? Things that can actually be a quick win for organizations that, or advanced features that you believe that once you have a solid foundation of processes and data, you can actually enable for an organization and will make them win fast. I can give you a couple of examples for Business Central, for example, the planning, MPS, NRP, MRP scheduling. It's not very used, unfortunately, even though it's the system, the product is very capable. But that's because we don't have many consultants who actually know how that engine applies to clients, because we don't have many shop floor experts in the consulting world.
Right.
And so the companies are missing out. What do you think are these in D365?
Well, you hit it on the nail. That's what I was going to bring up. As my number one was going to be MRP, because and actually in the finance and operations world, they've redesigned that to be more like a microservice where you can actually run your MRP on a daily basis, and you don't have to do it outside of business hours. Like it used to be this sort of taboo process that you ran once a week, and you ran it after hours because it took 12 or 14 hours to run.
Yeah.
And then you had this plan that you had to live with until the next Monday, right?
Yeah.
Well, they've gotten away from that now, where it's almost instantaneous, and so you can run your static plan, and then you can have dynamic plans ran every day of the week, so that you're getting constant updates to your demand signals.
Nice.
And so, that's a quick win, because it increases your visibility on the shop floor. It increases your visibility on your safety stock. It affects procurement and, when I'm going to be purchasing versus, where it might have been a gap. I can now plan my cash flow better, because I now know when to purchase better. I exactly know I need to issue this purchase order this week specifically in order for it to fall in line with everything that's coming down the pipe, right? So I think MRP is one of those areas. I think the other thing that people can benefit from, that if you're somewhat of a larger company, is the intercompany planning too, and not having all those manual steps for having those transactions occurring across company boundaries. That's another easy win. That's a big change too, where you've got those ledgers that are living in sync with each other. Kind of like what we talked about earlier in this call, where you are reducing that complexity, because now it's one shared data model even across companies, because you have this intercompany capability that you didn't previously have. What you probably were doing was manual journals to journal in this information for company A, and then journal it in for company B, right? And so now with intercompany, you gain that efficiency of being able to configure that intercompany relationship and benefit from those automatic transactions and those automatic postings and things of that nature. So that's two big areas that I always look at if they're a company that has more than one entity.
Excellent. That's great. I can totally relate with that. And there is so much we can do with these products, because the products are designed, again, D365 Operation Management, but Business Central in the same way, really. I believe Microsoft is really trying to make, in my opinion, to differentiate the platform from SAP, Oracle, NetSuite, by providing the framework and on which, once enabled, once configured, right, can pretty much again work in the way you want it, as opposed to an SAP, ERP. Well, this is MRP in SAP, right? And SAP says, well, this is how the top, 100 capitalized manufacturing companies in the world use it. Therefore, you must use it, which works if you are a company with 50,000 employees. But if you're a company with 2,000 employees and you don't have 50 million to spend on an ERP, chances are your odd and weird MPS and MRP approach allows you to be more competitive. And maybe it's a way to differentiate yourself from your competitors. And throughout configuration and a better understanding of the platform, you can actually adopt as long as you understand why the business is doing what they're doing. And because, again, another topic that I want to discuss in a moment now is that when you don't have that knowledge of the process itself, we as consultants, solution architects, as trainers, also tend to try to fill a gap with a customization. Let's customize it. Yep. Let's extend it, right? And that happens because, again, if you don't really have the understanding of the process, you lose an opportunity to say, but you know what? The process doesn't fit. Let's say if this misalignment is because you're doing something exceptionally well, which requires me to be more creative in how I configure the system, or maybe you're doing something you shouldn't be doing, and let me tell you how the system should support you, right? Yep. So now I'd say you're a trainer, but like me, been in consulting, right, and advisory, for many years. And the rules usually, good trainers need to have hands-on experience, on the floor experience. So fit, gap, capabilities, extensions, and eventually now with AI is all going to be a bit messy because we can use AI to extend and configure the system quickly and faster. Yeah. But clients can also use AI. So how do I do MRP in Dynamics for my shelf life constrained products? Oh, change this field, add an extension, do it. And then chaos. So what would be your approach? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I actually saw a post on LinkedIn from one of the Microsoft global black belts, and he called out a partner. He didn't name the partner. He just said one of our competitors, they designed an agent to do something with AI that MRP already did. And it's just because they didn't know how to use MRP, but they could build an agent. And so he was saying, make sure that when you're implementing AI, that you're not reinventing the wheel of something that Microsoft's already spent countless hours and dollars refining for you. You need to learn the tool, right? So, but I would be remiss to say that, we do have this world of AI that has been thrown upon us in the last 12 months. And Microsoft is embracing that, and they are developing agents out of the box. They got things like inventory agents and supplier communications agents and account reconciliation agent. They also have things like invoice capture, which typically was a third-party add-on you had to purchase from like Xflow or someone like that. So Microsoft is embracing that new technology, but they want you to take that with a grain of salt. It's not meant to replace something that's already functioning well in the software, right? So MRP is a great example. You were talking about how a lot of people just don't understand MRP. And so, let me design a customization or let me write it. Now that the default is let me do an AI agent to do something. And really, the software already has that capability built into it,
Yeah, exactly. That's very true. It happened to me as well. Something similar. I find out from a client who I'm helping with Business Central that they had that the Microsoft partner they're working with told them to build an extension through an agent to automate a vendor return, a purchase return, after a customer sales return for a non-compliance. So customer calls and says, the product you shipped to me is non-compliant. I want a product recall. And so I return into the warehouse through a normal sales return, flag a non-conformance, but then the team wanted to lock that item. And because they are resellers, I want to flag a non-conformance and send that batch back to the supplier who shipped it to me. Mm-hmm. And they got charged like 5 figures, tens of thousands, to build something, which the system does it already. And so, you know what happened? The client Googled it or asked ChatGPT, so if the price was fair, because they thought they needed, but they thought it was too much. And eventually AI said, well, look, man, it does it already. So now,
Yeah.
confused, the partner say, no, the system doesn't do it. AI tells me that it does it. They reached out to me and said, Alfredo, can you show me how it works? 30 minutes walkthrough, that's how we do it. And so, no, the client is saved a few tens of thousands. But the problem is, if you are a Microsoft partner, you lose trust. Because once the client says, so you are going to charge me for 20,000 for something that the system doesn't do, I don't trust you anymore. And good luck working with a client who is going to check every invoice, every call, every meter minutes. And so, knowledge, understanding, education, training on processes, right? Understanding data models, right? Will make you win more clients. Will
Absolutely.
make you right build reputation. Isn't that true? So, what do you think?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean that's very true. I mean you and I think what I had a mentor one time, and I think that one thing that consultants fall into the trap of is that because they are looked at as the expert, they're expected to be able to answer every question on the spot in the room. And my mentor said, that just because you're the expert doesn't mean that you know every little toggle and switch in the system, because there's thousands of them, right?
Yeah.
Every combination of what these toggles and switches make the system do, there's no way one person could know all of supply chain in D365. It's just too broad. You got procurement, you got manufacturing, you got advanced warehousing, transportation. So typically you have somebody that specializes in some of those modules, right?
One area, right? Of course.
So it's okay to say, that let me do some research. Let me be creative and see how I can solve this problem for you. But I don't want to give you an incorrect answer today. Let me come back and talk to you about it tomorrow or Friday or whatever when I've had some time to educate myself about your process and educate myself about some potential solutions that could solve your problem. I think that we get hung up in being the expert. I think that, we don't need to always, that being the expert doesn't mean you always have to have the instantaneous answer. We live in a very instantaneous world. Ever since the microwave was created, it's been driving more and more towards instantaneous, and everybody's used to that getting the answer from Chat GPT or seeing a YouTube video about it or whatever, And so I think that sometimes we just need to step back and say, okay, what is the problem that we're trying to address?
Correct.
And how do we approach this problem from a process perspective? And then once we understand that, how do we approach it from a software perspective? Is it something the system can already do? Is it something we need to extend? Or is it something we need to buy? Maybe there's a third-party extension already for it. Somebody's already suffering from this issue. And they've, a company has come out to fill that niche, and they've already invested a lot of time in developing this process for you. So it's always a matter of, do I build, do I buy, or do I use a standard product, right?
Exactly.
I mean, maybe not in that order, but that's your three choices: your standard product, to build it, or to buy it. And that's really the three choices you have. So,
100%.
I think that AI is the hot topic right now in the world. And so everything is coming from a lens of AI right now. And I think we're somewhat, it's almost like when I think with social media, how social media has a good side and a bad side. It's increased our communication abilities, but then it's also made people over communicate in some ways. So I think that AI is doing the same thing to us. I think that there's a good side to AI and then there's a bad side to AI. And I think that, having a consultant that has the real world experience and the training experience versus someone who has learned it all from chatting with Chat GPT, and they're coming in as an expert consultant, but they really don't have any real world experience. That's a differentiator for how you select a partner, or how you select your person that's going to be doing your configuration, right?
Exactly.
So I would say that the AI is real, and Microsoft is investing in it, and I think that it's something that everybody needs to be looking at, but it's not meant to replace the core product. It's meant to be an enhancement. At this point, it's meant to be like an enhancement to the process. It's meant to be an efficiency gain. You shouldn't be writing agents to do what the system can already do.
Correct. Exactly. And then this framework is how do you ensure that doesn't happen? Training is essential, right? Training on processes and therefore understanding features. As you correctly said, customers don't expect you to learn everything, and it's impossible. But the products are so rich in terms of features and possibilities, and through configuration, you can actually, in essence, create the features, right? The capabilities that the system can do by combining a bit of automation, a bit of Power Automate, right? For example. And so the idea is that through effective training, which allows you to understand the platform architecture and core capabilities and understanding the processes, you can actually use like intuition, right, to find that maybe the system doesn't do it, right? For example, that example that I gave you about non-conformance, product recalls create a vendor return. If you think about it, right, knowing that the platform stores at sub-ledger level, right, the details about the original shipment, the return, then I've got everything I need to trigger, that return back to the vendor, because the inventory ledger responsible for ensuring that the inventory is always in sync, particularly when you use item tracking, lot tracking, batch tracking, right, does link the original shipment to a purchase receipt, because it will not let me ship something I haven't got in stock. And so at that point, when I return something back to my warehouse, in the system, I've got everything I need to find the original return, the original purchase, right? Even the costing details. So with that in mind, I might not know how the feature is called. I might not know the page, right? But I said, well, hold on a moment. I believe the architecture is there. Let me take it offline. Let me do an investigation, right? Let me play with my sandbox and let me come back to you. The problem with, as you said, trying to give an answer immediately is because you lack confidence. If you are a consultant, right, you're not confident, you fear that, if I don't have every answer, my boss, right, my customer will judge me, so I need to. And that's only because, again, you lack confidence. If you learn the processes, if you learn the data, if you understand shop floor management, if you understand supply chain management, you probably can say, you know what, you asked me a very good question. Let me take a note. I'll take it offline. I'll come back to you. People appreciate now, right, your honesty.
Absolutely.
And a better solution, right? What do you think?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's exactly right. I mean, they would rather see a well thought out response, whether it's positive or negative, meaning that, yes, the system can do it, or no, the system can't do it. We have to choose go to either that build or buy. But they'd rather much have that thought out response and that conversation rather than ChatGPT telling them something different than what their consultant's telling them, right?
Exactly.
That's just that goes back to the lack of confidence conversation you were just having, and I think the other thing too is that we can't lose sight of our previous, if people didn't watch the previous webcast, they should. We can't lose sight of the importance of potentially changing a process, because not necessarily that you're doing the process wrong, but now it's time to, since you're spending the money and the time to invest in a new system, it's also a time to modernize and to look at all of my processes. And now that I have a one data platform that we talked about in the very beginning of this call, maybe now that I have this connected data, I can do something differently that's more industry standard, or that my consultant has seen success in other implementations that I can lean on to do, because of the platform is now providing me with something I didn't previously have, right? And so I think it's very important that you evaluate your processes for modernization just as much as you evaluate the system that you're going on to.
Very true. Absolutely. 100%. So that it's something that you can do, you can start looking at as you perfectly, as you started this conversation, saying if you want to be more knowledgeable, if you want to learn more about inventory and supply chain capabilities, learn the processes first, understanding how data moves from one place to the other, link it, because again, as you said, it's not about your P&L and my P&L, right?
Right.
And then with that understanding, then you can say, you know what, I might not know every feature of the software of the product, and you will never know every feature of the product, but I understand the supply chain management enough, right, that I can confidently tell you, you're a shop floor manager, and say, you know what, there is a gap in your process that is making you lose money. And so let me show you how you can do it. And if you accept my recommendation, guess what? There's a feature in the system that allows you to do it faster, right?
Absolutely.
And now you close this, and now that's how you win trust. It's, all right, that guy is really the expert, right? Right now I can trust this person, which means the conversation will flow naturally to the next step. I want to work with you. I want to hire you. Can you help me? I got another project for you. And now we're moving a bit away, from the main topic. We talk about consulting and training, but eventually it's the same, right? Even internally, right? You win the trust, right? And then people say, I want to work with you. If you work for a partner, you become the expert consultant that solves business problems, which means you can command a higher salary, right? You can command a higher daily rate. And that's the kind of skill set that you want to build, not trying to memorize 50 pages, right?
Right.
Isn't that true?
Or even, I remember the days of AX 2012 when the finance manual was like 500 pages long.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous. And so, it's just even gotten further and further away from the point of us being able to know everything. And there is no all-in-one expert anymore. Now you're sort of specialized, and one thing I saw a quote this week that I'll kind of leave this with you at the end here is that AI is not going to replace consultants. Consultants that know how to use AI and know how to use the software will replace consultants that don't.
Yes.
So 100%. They're using it as another tool in their tool belt, and same thing with the software. If they know how to problem solve and they know how to architect around a problem, that goes much further than knowing the screens, having the screens memorized and stuff, because you can't come in and say, well, this is how the system does it, and your process doesn't fit. Sorry,
Exactly.
So
very true.
I would say that the thing that I'd like people to take away from this conversation is that complexity is what drives the decision, and then how you deal with that complexity and how you solve that complexity to make it tenable to your users is where you draw success, right?
Yes.
Because you need to translate that complexity into a day-to-day process that people can do in their day-to-day job, and train them on that so that they retain that information and they are more efficient, they're more productive, their job is easier. It doesn't come across as a threatening type of implementation, anymore, where somebody feels like they're going to be maybe put out of a job or something like that. It's much more approachable if you can approach it from their individual job perspectives.
Totally. Absolutely, Jason. Thank you very much. With this one, we are a few minutes late. We can close it here. Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to talk to you about these topics. I believe our audience, our subscribers really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. And the fact that we have so many people, engaging testimony hopefully, the so-called community, right, will enjoy this content. We can close it here. Thank you very much. I will see you in a couple of weeks, right, for our next webinar. As usual, I will share this video on my social media channels. We are live on LinkedIn anyway, and I'll send an email with the recording later. I will include, of course, your contact detail, Jason, right, for people who want to learn more. I want to work with you as a trainer to get to study, to get certifications about finance and operations, for corporate training, for manufacturing distribution companies who want so corporate training from an expert like yourself, right? I will share the details so you can reach out to you. In the meantime, have a great rest of the day, and I'll talk to you very soon.
Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. Talk soon. Cheers. Bye.